The biggest mistake you can make in your pursuit of mental discipline is trying to conquer it. Lao Tzu never wrote a manual of 11 steps to mastering your mind, and this apparent contradiction hides the first great truth that can free you from the invisible prison of your own indiscipline. As you struggle to control your thoughts like a warrior trying to capture the wind, the ancient sage whispered a revolutionary secret. A disciplined mind is not one that has been tamed by force, but one that has found its natural flow. Over the next 60 minutes, you'll discover why decades of willpower and mind control techniques have not only failed to bring you the inner peace you seek, but have actually intensified the inner chaos you're trying to escape. Modern neuroscience is finally confirming what Lao Tzu intuited over 2,500 years ago. The more we resist the river of our own consciousness, the more violent its rapids become. There is a different path, a path Eastern masters called Wu Wei, action through non-action, effortless effort. This is not a passive concept or a philosophy for people who have given up on growth. It is the smartest and most efficient way to completely transform your relationship with discipline, fear, procrastination, and all the subtle forms of self-sabotage that keep you stuck in repetitive cycles of frustration. What you're about to learn goes against everything modern productivity culture teaches about self-discipline. It will challenge your belief that more effort always yields better results. And it will reveal why the most serene and fulfilled people in the world are not those who have won a war against themselves, but those who have learned to dance harmoniously with the natural seasons of their own psyche. Welcome to Axiom Sage, where the timeless wisdom of the East meets the challenges of the modern mind. I am your companion on this journey of discovery, and today we will explore together Lao Tzu's 11 fundamental lessons for mastering the mind and self-discipline, not through conquest, but through a deep understanding of how nature has already taught us everything we need to know about true inner power. If you feel like you've been fighting yourself for too long, if discipline has become synonymous with suffering in your life, then these words have come to you at the precise moment your soul was ready to hear a completely different approach. You know that devastating feeling of waking up at 3 a.m. with your mind racing, replaying all the things you should have done during the day but didn't? That relentless inner voice reminding you of all the abandoned projects, the broken promises to yourself, the disciplines you started with enthusiasm and died by the third week? This is the silent epidemic of our age. Millions of intelligent, capable, and well-intentioned people who feel completely powerless over their own undisciplined minds. The cruel irony of modernity is that we have more tools, techniques, and knowledge about productivity than any previous generation, yet we also have more people suffering from anxiety, chronic procrastination, and a profound sense of being disconnected from their own life purpose. Meditation apps, habit spreadsheets, life coaches, mindfulness courses. We've tried it all, but inner peace always seems elusive, always just one method away. Lao Tzu would observe our times with deep compassion and perhaps a subtle smile. He would see that our desperate search for mental control is precisely what keeps us from true inner mastery. It's like trying to grasp the moon reflected in water. The more violently we try to capture it, the more it fragments and disappears. The ancient sage would whisper that we are making a fundamental mistake. We treat our minds as enemy territory to be conquered, when in fact they are a wild garden waiting to be understood. Here's the first disturbing truth I'll fully reveal by the end of this video. Your indiscipline is not a character flaw. It's not laziness, lack of willpower, or personal inadequacy. It's a natural symptom of living against the deepest currents of your own nature. When you stop swimming against the current and learn to move with the intelligent flow of life, discipline ceases to be an effort and becomes a natural expression of who you truly are. But there's something even deeper going on here, something Eastern traditions have understood for millennia, and that modern neuroscience is tentatively beginning to confirm. The human mind was not designed for the kind of rigid control our culture teaches us to seek. It was created to flow in natural cycles. Periods of intense focus alternated with moments of creative rest, seasons of iron discipline followed by intervals of contemplative regeneration. When we try to force our psyche to function like an industrial machine, we create precisely the internal resistance we perceive as lack of discipline. This is where our civilization made the most devastating mistake in the history of human evolution. We turned discipline into a synonym for war against ourselves. Observe the language we use: overcoming procrastination, breaking bad habits, mastering the mind, achieving goals. Every word carries the energy of violence, of conflict, of separation between a commanding self and a resisting self. Lao Tzu would observe this approach and whisper a simple question that shakes the entire structure. How can there be victory where there is no enemy? The productivity industry has built a billion-dollar empire selling weapons for a war that shouldn't exist. They convince us that we are internally divided, a superior, rational part that should control an inferior, chaotic part that needs to be dominated. This artificial division is the root of all modern psychological suffering. It's like cutting a tree in half and expecting it to grow back healthy. Think about the last 5 attempts you've made to discipline yourself. How many began with feverish enthusiasm and ended in self-flagellation? How many times have you promised yourself to wake up at 5 in the morning, meditate for an hour a day, completely cut out social media, or follow a military-style exercise routine? And how many times has that initial energy turned into guilt, then into giving up, then into a profound sense of personal inadequacy? This cycle doesn't happen because you're weak or lazy. It happens because you're trying to plant tropical seeds in Arctic soil. You're completely ignoring the natural rhythms of your psyche and trying to impose an artificial timetable that goes against the fundamental laws of how transformation actually occurs in nature. Lao Tzu taught through paradoxes because the truth about discipline is paradoxical. You can only truly control what you stop trying to control. Water doesn't fight against stone. It embraces it, understands it, finds its way around it, and eventually transforms it. The wind doesn't force leaves to dance. It invites them through its very nature, and the dance emerges spontaneously. But our culture has sold us a seductive lie, that more effort always yields better results, that if 1 hour of exercise is good, 3 hours is better, that if waking up at 6 in the morning is productive, waking up at 4 is even more productive. This linear mindset completely ignores the law of diminishing returns that governs all natural systems, including your mind. The difference between authentic discipline and disguised self-violence is subtle but revolutionary. True discipline feels like a river finding its natural course. There is direction, there is purpose, there is constant movement, but also fluidity, adaptability, and respect for the terrain. False discipline feels like damming a river with brute force. It may work temporarily, but the accumulated pressure eventually explodes in destructive forms. If you've made it this far and are beginning to question everything you believed about productivity and mental control, that's no coincidence. It means your inner wisdom is recognizing a truth your conditioned mind has long resisted. Subscribe to the channel if you're ready to explore a completely different approach, because what comes next will challenge not only your techniques, but your entire philosophy about what it means to be truly disciplined. Now I'm going to reveal Lao Tzu's first 5 fundamental lessons on mental discipline. But be prepared, because each one goes against everything you've learned about self-control. These aren't techniques to apply as remedies, but principles to incorporate as a new way of relating to yourself. The ancient master's first lesson is perhaps the most disturbing. A disciplined mind is not one that never wanders, but one that gently returns whenever it realizes it has wandered. This seemingly simple distinction completely destroys the tyranny of perfection that paralyzes us. How many times have you abandoned a meditation practice because you couldn't stop thinking? How many exercise routines have you ended because you missed 3 days in a row? Lao Tzu would observe that you were confusing the ocean with the waves. Discipline is the deep, steady ocean, not the absence of movement on the surface. Here's a practical exercise that transforms this wisdom into a lived experience. For the next 3 days, whenever you notice your mind wandering from whatever task you're working on, simply whisper, "Thank you," internally and gently return your attention. Don't analyze why you were distracted. Don't criticize yourself, or try to focus more. Simply thank the distraction for awakening your awareness, and return to the present moment. This simple practice completely rebuilds your relationship with what we call lapses in concentration. The second lesson cuts even deeper. The greatest power comes not from adding disciplines to your life, but from removing everything that is out of alignment with your essential nature. Our culture teaches us to accumulate positive habits as if they were military conquests. More exercise, more meditation, more reading, more networking, more productivity. But Lao Tzu taught via negativa, the path of subtraction, refinement, and essentialization. Like a sculptor who reveals a statue by removing excess marble, you reveal your natural discipline by removing everything forced and artificial. The third lesson confronts our obsession with immediate results. True transformation happens in layers, like the seasons. Trying to speed up the process is like trying to hasten the ripening of a fruit. You destroy the very thing you were trying to cultivate. This wisdom is revolutionary in a culture addicted to hacking and optimization. Lao Tzu observed that nature is in no hurry, but everything happens in its own time. Your mental discipline will follow the same principles if you stop violating it with unrealistic expectations. Think of a centuries-old tree. It didn't wake up one day deciding to grow 10 meters at once. It simply maintained its basic orientation: roots downward, crown upward, constant openness to light, and growth occurred as a natural consequence of this orientation maintained over time. Your discipline works exactly the same way. Small, consistent directions, sustained with patience, produce transformations that no heroic effort can achieve. The fourth lesson challenges our need for total control. The undisciplined mind tries to control everything. The wise mind chooses carefully what to control and releases the rest with confidence. This distinction saves precious psychic energy that you have wasted trying to micromanage aspects of life that are beyond your direct influence. You can control your actions, but you cannot control the outcomes. You can control your preparation, but you cannot control the opportunities. You can control your response, but you cannot control the circumstances. The fifth lesson synthesizes all the previous ones into a practical principle. True discipline is living each moment with total presence, knowing that this moment is the only place where transformation truly happens. It's not about having a perfect future or correcting an imperfect past. It's about fully honoring this present moment as the only real laboratory for your evolution. When you stop living in the psychological time zone of "when I can discipline myself, then I'll be happy," and begin to find deep satisfaction in the very process of being present, discipline ceases to be a means to an end and becomes an art form. There's an ancient Taoist parable Lao Tzu told about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. "What a terrible misfortune!" The farmer simply replied, "Perhaps." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors celebrated. "What wonderful luck!" The farmer again whispered, "Perhaps." On the third day, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke its leg. "What a tragedy!" the neighbors cried. "Perhaps," the farmer said calmly. A week later, soldiers arrived in the village, conscripting all the able-bodied young men for war, but they dismissed the son because of his broken leg. This seemingly simple story contains all the wisdom you need to transform your relationship with mental discipline. The farmer wasn't apathetic or resigned. He had cultivated something far more sophisticated: the ability to remain centered amid constantly changing external circumstances. He knew that true stability comes not from controlling events, but from developing an unshakable inner presence that remains serene regardless of what happens around you. Now apply this wisdom to your own cycles of discipline and indiscipline. How many times have you interpreted a relapse as evidence of personal failure? How many times has a productive week fueled your illusion that you've finally won the battle against procrastination? The farmer in the parable would observe these ups and downs and gently whisper, "Maybe." Not because nothing matters, but because everything matters in a deeper way than our interpretive mind can currently comprehend. That week when you completely lost your exercise routine may have been exactly the rest your body needed to regenerate. That period of intense procrastination may have been your psyche processing internal changes that haven't yet reached consciousness. That phase of total indiscipline may have been the universe's invitation for you to question whether the disciplines you were forcing were truly serving your evolution or just your ego. But here's something even more profound that I'll reveal fully in the second half of this video. There's a completely different way to approach self-discipline that few know about and even fewer practice. An approach based not on adding more control to your life, but on systematically removing everything that's creating internal resistance. Like a river that naturally finds the path of least resistance, but still carves powerful canyons over time. This second part of the journey will explore Lao Tzu's 6 most advanced lessons, those he reserved only for disciples who had transcended the need to conquer themselves and were ready to learn the more subtle art of flowing with the deep currents of nature itself. If you feel that the first 5 lessons have awakened something within you, then you are ready to dive into the deeper waters of this ancient wisdom. Now we come to Lao Tzu's most counterintuitive lessons on mental discipline, the ones that go against all modern conditioning about effort and achievement. Prepare to have your most fundamental beliefs about productivity irreversibly challenged. The 6th lesson is perhaps the most radical. The greatest discipline is knowing when not to discipline yourself. Our culture completely pathologizes the natural cycles of expansion and contraction that govern all living systems. We treat periods of lower productivity as illnesses to be cured, moments of introspection as laziness to be combated, phases of questioning as crises to be overcome quickly. But Lao Tzu observed that winter is as necessary as summer. It is not the absence of life, but preparation for a new form of flourishing. Here's a revolutionary practice that goes against everything you've learned. For the next 2 weeks, whenever you feel internal resistance to doing any productive activity, stop and genuinely ask yourself, is this resistance protecting me from something? Is it signaling that I need rest, reflection, or reorientation? Don't approach this question superficially. Allow the answer to emerge from the inner silence. You'll be shocked to discover how often your procrastination was actually intuitive wisdom trying to redirect you. The 7th lesson penetrates the essence of human nature. The mind that seeks constant control is like a child that has never learned to trust. The wise mind cultivates trust in the process of life. This trust is not passivity or resignation. It is the mature recognition that there are intelligences operating in your life that transcend your capacity for rational understanding. When you stop micromanaging every aspect of your evolution and begin consciously collaborating with forces greater than yourself, discipline transforms from a struggle into a dance. The 8th lesson challenges our obsession with consistency. Flexibility is a greater strength than rigidity. The tree that bends in the storm remains rooted. The one that resists breaks. Applied to mental discipline, this means that your ability to adapt your practices to internal and external changes is more valuable than your ability to maintain rigid routines. The wise man constantly modifies his methods, but never abandons his fundamental principles. Consider how this wisdom applies to your current habits. Are you maintaining practices that no longer serve your evolution simply out of fear of breaking the sequence? Are you forcing methods that worked in the past but no longer resonate with who you've become? True discipline has the courage to constantly reinvent itself, like a river that changes its course when it encounters obstacles but never stops flowing toward the ocean. The ninth lesson reveals the secret to lasting motivation. Sustained action is born of love, not duty. When you force behaviors through guilt or fear, you create resistance. When you act from genuine interest and care, energy is renewed naturally. This distinction is crucial to understanding why some habits are maintained effortlessly, while others require constant willpower. Try this self-awareness experiment. List 3 practices you maintain easily and 3 you constantly abandon. Notice the emotional quality behind each one. Sustainable practices usually carry the energy of curiosity, pleasure, or genuine care. Those you frequently abandon are tainted by should, must, or have to. Lao Tzu taught that transforming have to into I'm curious about is more powerful than any productivity technique. The 10th lesson summarizes all the previous wisdom. The longest path is sometimes the shortest. Haste is the greatest enemy of true achievement. In a culture addicted to optimization and hacking, this lesson sounds almost heretical. But observe nature. A seed doesn't try to accelerate its growth. It trusts in the time it takes to develop deep roots that will withstand future storms. Your mental discipline operates on the same organic principles. Superficial, rapid changes rarely last. Deep, slow transformations rarely fail. When you accept the natural rhythm of your evolution, you stop wasting energy fighting against time and start using that energy to deepen the changes that truly matter. We now come to Lao Tzu's 11th and most profound lesson on mental mastery, the one that transcends all techniques and reveals the invisible essence behind all true discipline. But before I fully reveal it, I must point out the gulf that separates those who apply these teachings from those who remain trapped in conventional methods of self-control. Consider 2 people facing the same challenge. Say, establishing a regular meditation practice. The first person, conditioned by the modern mindset, creates a military plan. I will meditate every day at 6 a.m. for 20 minutes, no exceptions. If I miss a day, I will meditate for 40 minutes the next day to make up for it. This person treats meditation as territory to be conquered, the mind as an enemy to be conquered. The second person, influenced by Taoist wisdom, approaches the same practice like a gardener tends a delicate plant. She sets an intention. I will create regular spaces for stillness and self-discovery. Some days she meditates for 20 minutes, others just 5. Sometimes she replaces formal meditation with a contemplative walk or simply a few moments of mindful breathing. She listens to the internal and external rhythms, adapting the form but maintaining the essence. After a year, who do you think developed a deeper and more lasting practice? Neuroscience confirms what Lao Tzu knew intuitively. Practices based on conscious flexibility and self-compassion create more stable neuroplastic changes than those based on rigidity and self-demand. The human brain evolved to respond to care, not violence, even when that violence is self-inflicted. Here's a practical demonstration of this difference. For the next 7 days, choose a small practice. It could be 5 minutes of reading, 3 deep breaths before meals, or simply drinking a glass of water upon waking. But instead of creating rigid rules, set a gentle intention and allow the form to adapt to each day's circumstances. Notice how this approach feels different in your body and mind compared to the forced disciplines of the past. The 11th lesson reveals the core of all Taoist wisdom applied to self-discipline. The truly disciplined mind is one that has discovered its original nature beneath all layers of conditioning and lives spontaneously from that discovery. This is not discipline as adding behaviors to your life, but as removing everything that obscures your highest natural expression. Think of a crystal clear spring. It doesn't need to strive to be pure. Purity is its nature. When rocks and debris block its flow, the work isn't to force the water to flow, but to gently remove the obstacles. Your mind works the same way. Beneath all anxiety, procrastination, and indiscipline lies a naturally serene, focused, and creative awareness. True discipline isn't creating this awareness through techniques, but discovering what's blocking its natural expression. This discovery completely changes your relationship with habits and routines. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to do this?" you begin to investigate, "What's preventing my natural tendency to take good care of myself?" Instead of adding more control to your life, you begin to identify and dissolve patterns of resistance that drain your vital energy. But here's the ultimate paradox that few understand. The more you try to achieve this state of natural discipline, the further it recedes. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The faster you chase it, the faster it flees. Lao Tzu would whisper that you already are this disciplined awareness you seek. The problem isn't developing it, but stopping obscuring it with layers of unnecessary effort. Which of these revelations about natural discipline surprised you the most? Comment below, because your reflection not only deepens your own understanding but contributes to the journey of discovery for everyone in this community. And if these teachings resonate deeply with something you've always known but never been able to articulate, then you're ready for the final synthesis, where all these lessons unify into an understanding that can transform not only your discipline, but your entire way of existing in the world. Now we come to the moment to fully resolve the promise I made at the beginning of this journey, to reveal why Lao Tzu's 11 lessons are actually a single truth seen from different angles, and how this unified understanding can free you forever from the tyranny of false discipline. The secret that permeates all Taoist teachings on self-discipline is this: you never had a discipline problem. You had an identity problem. All your life, you believed yourself to be someone who needed to control yourself, improve yourself, discipline yourself. But Lao Tzu would gently whisper that this person you think you are, this identity based on deficiencies and needs for improvement, is an illusion created by social conditioning. Beneath this conditioned identity lies your original nature, that consciousness that naturally seeks growth, health, beauty, truth, and contribution. This consciousness needs no discipline because discipline is its spontaneous expression. It is like the sun that does not need to strive to shine. Radiance is its fundamental nature. Revolution happens when you stop trying to improve who you think you are and begin to discover who you truly are. This discovery doesn't happen through psychological analysis or mental introspection, but through moments of complete presence where your conditioned identity temporarily dissolves and your original nature shines through. Each of the 11 lessons we explore are facets of this single discovery. You are not that undisciplined person in need of correction. You are pure consciousness that has temporarily identified with limiting mental patterns. When this identification dissolves naturally, not through force, but through loving understanding, discipline emerges like the fragrance of a flower. Here is the synthesis practice that integrates all Taoist wisdom on mental discipline. For the next 30 days, whenever you feel any form of internal resistance, stop and ask yourself with genuine curiosity, who is feeling this resistance? Don't seek an intellectual answer, but allow the question to resonate in the silence. More often than not, you will discover that the resistance belongs to an imagined identity, not to your present, waking consciousness. This simple inquiry, maintained consistently, gradually dissolves the layers of false identity that sustain all patterns of indiscipline. You begin to realize that procrastination, anxiety, and self-harm are activities of a person you never really were. They are just stories being told in your consciousness, not truths about your nature. The end result of this understanding is a discipline that is nothing like what our culture calls discipline. It's more like the natural flow of a river toward the ocean. There's a clear direction, constant movement, the ability to navigate obstacles, but it all happens without effort or internal resistance. You don't discipline yourself to meditate. You meditate because silence is your nature. Don't force yourself to eat healthily. You nourish your body because self-care is your spontaneous expression. This transformation cannot be forced or rushed, but can be invited through the patient understanding that you already are what you seek to develop. Discipline is not a destination to be reached, but a rediscovery of who you have always been beneath all the layers of social conditioning. There's an uncomfortable truth about transformation that I need to share before we end this journey. Most people who have watched this video thus far will feel a deep resonance with these teachings, perhaps even genuine emotion as they recognize their original nature beneath the layers of conditioning. And then, in the coming days, they will gradually return to the same patterns of self-demand and forced discipline they've always known. Not out of malice or lack of intelligence, but because it's more familiar to live as someone with problems to solve than as someone who is intrinsically whole. The role of the person who is working on themselves is more familiar than that of the person who has discovered they never needed fixing. Our entire culture is structured to keep you busy improving yourself, never truly allowing you to rest in the simplicity of your original nature. But you don't have to be a statistic of this collective trend. You can choose right now to start living from a completely different premise, that your natural discipline is simply waiting for the end of the internal war you've been waging with yourself, that your procrastination is simply creativity awaiting conscious direction, that your anxiety is simply vital energy awaiting clear purpose. Lao Tzu would observe our times and whisper that the greatest revolutionary act is not becoming a more disciplined person, but discovering that you were never the undisciplined person you thought you were. This discovery comes not through complex techniques or heroic practices, but through the quiet courage to question the fundamental narrative about who you are. The way forward isn't to add more disciplines to your life, but to begin each day with a simple question. If I stopped treating myself as someone who needs correction and started honoring myself as someone who is naturally evolving, what would this day look like? This question, asked with sincerity, dissolves more internal resistance than years of productivity techniques. If you've reached the end of this journey, it's no coincidence. Something within you recognized truths your soul has always known, but your conditioned mind resisted. Subscribe to the channel if you want to continue exploring this completely different approach to personal growth, one based on recognition rather than improvement, on discovery rather than development. And most importantly, start experimenting with these principles today, not as another method to master, but as a gentle invitation to rediscover who you truly are when you stop pretending to be who you think you should be. Share this video with someone you feel is ready to question their most fundamental beliefs about discipline and personal transformation. Remember, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. The discipline that can be forced is not the true discipline. The you that can be improved is not the true you. Your journey is not to become a better person, but to discover who you have always been when you remove all the masks you have learned to wear. This recognition is the beginning of a completely new way of existing, not as someone disciplining themselves, but as discipline itself expressing itself through the human form that you are.